Christopher Edward Nolan is an English-American film director, screenwriter, and producer. He is one of the highest-grossing directors in history, and among the most successful and acclaimed filmmakers of the 21st century. Having made his directorial debut with Following, Nolan gained considerable attention for his second feature, Memento. The acclaim of these independent films gave Nolan the opportunity to make the big-budget thriller Insomnia, and the mystery drama The Prestige. He found further popular and critical success with The Dark Knight trilogy, Inception, and Interstellar. His 9 films have grossed over $4.2 billion worldwide and garnered a total of 26 Oscar nominations and 7 awards. Nolan has co-written several of his films with his younger brother, Jonathan Nolan, and runs the production company Syncope, with his wife Emma Thomas. Nolan's films are rooted in philosophical, sociological, and ethical concepts, exploring human morality, the construction of time, and the malleable nature of memory and personal identity. His body of work is permeated by metafictive elements, temporal shifts, solipsistic perspectives, non-linear storytelling, practical special effects, and analogous relationships between visual language and narrative elements. Life and career. Early life and career beginnings. 1970 to 97. Nolan was born in London. His English father, Brendan James Nolan, was an advertising executive, and his American mother, Christina, worked as a flight attendant and an English teacher. His childhood was split between London and Chicago, and he has both British and American citizenship. He has an older brother, Matthew, and a younger brother, Jonathan. He began making films at age 7, borrowing his father's Super 8 camera and shooting short films with his action figures. Growing up, Nolan was a great admirer of Star Wars, and around the age of 8 he made a stop-motion animation homage called Space Wars. His uncle, who worked at NASA building guidance systems for the Apollo rockets, sent him some launch footage. I refilmed them off the screen and cut them in, thinking no one would notice. Nolan later remarked, "For the age of 11, he aspired to be a professional filmmaker." When Nolan's family relocated to Chicago during his formative years, he started making films with Adrian and Rocco Bellic. He has continued his collaboration with the brothers, receiving a credit for his editorial assistance on their Oscar-nominated documentary Genghis Blues. Nolan also worked alongside Rocco on documenting a safari across 4 African countries, organized by the late photojournalist Dan Eldon in the early 1990s. Nolan was educated at Haileybury and Imperial Service College, an independent school in Hertford Heath, Hertfordshire, and later read English literature at University College London. He chose UCL specifically for its filmmaking facilities, which comprised a Steenbeck editing suite and 16mm film cameras. Nolan was president of the Union's Film Society, and with Emma Thomas he screened 35mm feature films during the school year and used the money earned to produce 16mm films over the summers. During his college years, Nolan made 2 short films. The first was the surreal 8mm Tarantella, which was shown on Image Union. The second was Larceny, filmed over a weekend in black and white with a limited cast, crew, and equipment. Funded by Nolan and shot with the Society's equipment. It appeared at the Cambridge Film Festival in 1996 and is considered one of UCL's best shorts. After graduation, Nolan directed corporate videos and industrial films. He also made a third short, Doodlebug, about a man chasing chasing an insect around a flat with a shoe, only to discover when killing it that it is a miniature of himself. During this period of his career, Nolan had little or no success getting his projects off the ground. He later recalled the stack of rejection letters that greeted his early forays into making films, adding, "There's a very limited pool of finance in the UK. To be honest, it's a very clubby kind of place." Never had any support whatsoever from the British film industry. Breakthrough. In 1998, Nolan directed his first feature, which he personally funded and filmed with friends. Following depicts an unemployed young writer who trails strangers through London, hoping they will provide material for his first novel, but is drawn into a criminal underworld when he fails to keep his distance. The film was inspired by Nolan's experience of living in London and having his flat burgled. There is an interesting connection between a stranger going through your possessions and the concept of following people at random through a crowd. Both take you beyond the boundaries of ordinary social relations. Following was made on a modest budget of £3,000 and was shot on weekends over the course of a year. To conserve film stock, each scene in the film was rehearsed extensively to ensure that the first and second take could be used in the final edit. Co-produced with Emma Thomas and Jeremy Theobald, Nolan wrote, photographed and edited the film himself. Following won several awards during its festival run and was well received by critics. The New Yorker wrote that it echoed Hitchcock classics, but was leaner and meaner. On the 11th of December 2012, it was released on DVD and Blu-ray as part of the Criterion Collection. As a result of Following's success, Nolan was afforded the opportunity to make his breakthrough hit Memento. During a road trip from Chicago to Los Angeles, his brother Jonathan pitched the idea for Memento Mori, about a man with anterograde amnesia who uses notes and tattoos to hunt for his wife's murderer. Nolan developed a screenplay that told the story in reverse. Aaron Ryder, an executive for Newmarket Films, said it was perhaps the most innovative script I had ever seen. The film was optioned and given a budget of $4.5 million. Memento, starring Guy Pearce and Carrie-Anne Moss, premiered in September 2000 at the Venice International Film Festival to critical acclaim. Joe Morgenstern of The Wall Street Journal wrote in his review, "I can't remember when a movie has seemed so clever, strangely affecting and slyly funny at the very same time." Basil Smith, in the book The Philosophy of Neo-Noir, draws a comparison with John Locke's An Essay Concerning Human Understanding, which argues that conscious memories constitute our identities, a theme which Nolan explores in the film. The film was a box office success and received a number of accolades, including Academy Award and Golden Globe Award nominations for its screenplay, Independent Spirit Awards for Best Director and Best Screenplay, and a Directors Guild of America Award nomination. Memento was considered by numerous critics to be one of the best films of the 2000s. Impressed by his work on Memento, Steven Soderbergh recruited Nolan to direct the psychological thriller Insomnia, starring Academy Award winners Al Pacino, Robin Williams and Hilary Swank. Warner Brothers initially wanted a more seasoned director, but Soderbergh and his Section 8 Productions fought for Nolan, as well as his choice of cinematographer and editor. With a $46 million budget, it was described as a much more conventional Hollywood film than anything the director has done before. A remake of the 1997 Norwegian film of the same name, Insomnia, is about two Los Angeles detectives sent to a northern Alaskan town to investigate the methodical murder of a local teenager. It received positive reviews from critics and performed well at the box office, earning $113 million worldwide. Film critic Roger Ebert praised the film for introducing new perspectives and ideas on the issues of morality and guilt. Unlike most remakes, the Nolan Insomnia is not a pale retread, but a re-examination of the material, like a new production of a good play. Eric Skjoldberg, the director of the original film, was satisfied with Nolan's version, calling it a well-crafted, smart film, with a really good director handling it. Richard Schickel of Time deemed Insomnia a worthy successor to Memento, and a triumph of atmosphere over a none too mysterious mystery. Quote, "After Insomnia, Nolan planned a Howard Hughes biographical film starring Jim Carrey. He had written a screenplay, but when he learned that Martin Scorsese was making a Hughes biopic, he reluctantly tabled his script and moved on to other projects, having turned down an offer to direct the historical epic Troy. Nolan worked on adapting Ruth Rendell's crime novel The Keys to the Street into a screenplay which he planned to direct for Fox Searchlight Pictures, but eventually left the project citing the similarities to his previous films, The Dark Knight trilogy, and mainstream success. In early 2003, Nolan approached Warner Brothers with the idea to make a new Batman film. Fascinated by the character and story, he wanted to make a film grounded in a relatable world more reminiscent of a classical drama than a comic book fantasy. Batman Begins, the biggest project Nolan had undertaken to that point, premiered in June 2005 to both critical acclaim and commercial success, starring Christian Bale in the title role, along with Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, Morgan Freeman, and Liam Neeson. The film revived the franchise, heralding a trend towards darker films which rebooted backstories. It tells the origin story of the character from Bruce Wayne's initial fear of bats, the death of his parents, his journey to become Batman, and his fight against Ra's al Ghul's plot to destroy Gotham City. Praised for its psychological depth and contemporary relevance, Kyle Smith of the New York Post called it a wake-up call to the people who keep giving us cute capers about men in tights. It wipes the smirk off the face of the superhero movie. Batman Begins was the 8th highest-grossing film of 2005 in the United States and the year's 9th highest-grossing film worldwide. It was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Cinematography and 3 BAFTA awards. On its 10th anniversary, Forbes published an article describing the film's influence. Reboot became part of our modern vocabulary, and superhero origin stories became increasingly en vogue for the genre. The phrase dark and gritty likewise joined the cinematic lexicon, influencing our perception of different approaches to storytelling not only in the comic book film genre but in all sorts of other genres as well. Before returning to the Batman franchise, Nolan directed, co-wrote and produced The Prestige, an adaptation of the Christopher Priest novel about 2 rival 19th-century magicians. In 2001, when Nolan was in post-production for Insomnia, he asked his brother Jonathan to help write the script for the film. The screenplay was an intermittent, 5-year collaboration between the brothers. Nolan initially intended to make the film as early as 2003, postponing the project after agreeing to make Batman Begins, starring Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman in the lead roles. The Prestige received critical acclaim, and earned over $109 million worldwide. With a dark and twisting tale, Roger Ebert described it as quite a movie, atmospheric, obsessive, almost satanic. Kenneth Turan of the Los Angeles Times called it an ambitious, unnerving melodrama, noting that the film is about the price that must be paid for immortality in any creative field, about the risk and sacrifice that superlative magic demands. Following the release of The Prestige, he was considering to direct a feature film adaptation of the British television series The Prisoner, but later dropped out of the project. In July 2006, Nolan announced that the follow-up to Batman Begins would be called The Dark Knight. Approaching the sequel, Nolan wanted to expand on the noirish quality of the first film by broadening the canvas and taking on the dynamic of a story of the city. A large crime story where you're looking at the police, the justice system, the vigilante, the poor people, the rich people, the criminals. Released in 2008 to great critical acclaim, The Dark Knight has been cited as one of the best films of the 2000s and one of the best superhero films ever made. Manohla Dargis of the New York Times found the film to be of higher artistic merit than many Hollywood blockbusters. Pitched at the divide between art and industry, poetry and entertainment, it goes darker and deeper than any Hollywood movie of its comic book kind. Ebert expressed a similar point of view, describing it as a haunted film that leaps beyond its origins and becomes an engrossing tragedy. The film set a number of box office records during its theatrical run, earning $534,858,444 in North America and $469,700,000 abroad, for a worldwide total of $1,004,558,444. The Dark Knight is the first feature film shot partially in the 15/70 IMAX format. At the 81st Academy Awards, the film was nominated for 8 Oscars, winning 2, the Academy Award for Best Sound Editing and a posthumous Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for Heath Ledger. Nolan was recognized by his peers with nominations from the DGA, Writers Guild of America and Producers Guild of America. After The Dark Knight's success, Warner Brothers signed Nolan to direct Inception. Nolan also wrote and co-produced the film, described as a contemporary sci-fi actioner set within the architecture of the mind, before being released in theaters. Critics like Peter Travers and Lulu Menick wondered if Nolan's faith in moviegoers' intelligence would cost him at the box office. Starring a large ensemble cast led by Leonardo DiCaprio, the film was released on the 16th of July 2010, and was a critical and commercial success. Richard Roeper of the Chicago Sun-Times awarded the film a perfect score of A+ and called it one of the best movies of the century. Mark Kermode named it the best film of 2010, stating, "Inception is proof that people are not stupid, that cinema is not trash, and that it is possible for blockbusters and art to be the same thing." Veteran producer John Davis speculated that its success could inspire studios to make more original content. "I can promise you that heads of studios are already going into production meetings saying we need fresh ideas for summer movies. We want original concepts like Inception that are big and bold enough to carry themselves." The film ended up grossing over $820 million worldwide and was nominated for 8 Oscars, including Best Picture. It won Best Cinematography, Best Sound Mixing, Best Sound Editing and Best Visual Effects. Nolan also received BAFTA, Golden Globe, DGA and PGA Award nominations, as well as a WGA Award for his work on the film. While in post-production on Inception, Nolan gave an interview for These Amazing Shadows, a documentary spotlighting film appreciation and preservation by the National Film Registry. He also appeared in Side by Side, a documentary about the history, process and workflow of both digital and photochemical film creation. In 2012, Nolan directed his third and final Batman film, The Dark Knight Rises. Although he was initially hesitant about returning to the series, he agreed to come back after developing a story with his brother and David S. Goyer which he felt would end the series on a high note. The Dark Knight Rises was released on the 20th of July 2012 to critical acclaim. Edward He of Salon called it arguably the biggest, darkest, most thrilling and disturbing and utterly balls-out spectacle ever created for the screen, further describing the work as auteurist spectacle on a scale never before possible and never before attempted. Christy Lamar of the Associated Press wrote in her review that Nolan concluded his trilogy in their typically spectacular, ambitious fashion, but disliked the overloaded story and excessive grimness. This is the problem when you're an exceptional, visionary filmmaker. When you give people something extraordinary, they expect it every time. Anything short of that feels like a letdown. Like its predecessor, it performed well at the box office, becoming the 13th film in the world to gross over $1 billion. During a midnight showing of the film at the Century 16 Cinema in Aurora, Colorado, a gunman opened fire inside the theater, killing 12 people and injuring 58 others. Nolan released a statement to the press expressing his condolences for the victims of what he described as a senseless tragedy. During story discussions for The Dark Knight Rises in 2010, Goya told Nolan of his idea to present Superman in a modern context. Impressed with Goya's concept, Nolan pitched the idea for Man of Steel to Warner Brothers, who hired Nolan to produce and Goya to write. Nolan offered Zack Snyder to direct the film, based on his stylized adaptations of 300 and Watchmen and his innate aptitude for dealing with superheroes as real characters. Starring Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Kevin Costner, Russell Crowe and Michael Shannon, Man of Steel grossed more than $660 million at the worldwide box office, but garnered a divided critical reaction. Large-scale epics, 2014-present. Nolan and Thomas served as executive producers on Transcendence, the directorial debut of Nolan's longtime cinematographer Wally Pfister, based on a script by Jack Paglin. The film revolves around two scientists who work toward creating a machine that possesses sentience and collective intelligence. Starring Johnny Depp, Rebecca Hall and Paul Bettany, Transcendence was released in theaters on the 18th of April 2014 to mostly unfavorable reviews. Dad of the AV Club gave the film a C rating, pointing out that lacks Nolan's talent for weaving pop spectacle out of cultural anxieties. In January 2013, it was announced that Nolan would direct, write and produce a science fiction film entitled Interstellar. The first drafts of the script were written by Jonathan Nolan, and it was originally to be directed by Steven Spielberg. Based on the scientific theories of renowned theoretical physicist Kip Thorne, the film depicted a heroic interstellar voyage to the farthest borders of our scientific understanding. Interstellar starred Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, Jessica Chastain, Bill Irwin, Michael Caine and Ellen Burstyn, and was notably Nolan's first collaboration with cinematographer Hoyt van Hoytema. Paramount Pictures and Warner Brothers co-financed and co-distributed the project, released on the 5th of November 2014 to positive reviews and strong box office results, grossing over $670 million worldwide. A.O. Scott wrote in his review for the New York Times, Interstellar, full of visual dazzle, thematic ambition, is a sweeping, futuristic adventure driven by grief, dread and regret. The film was particularly praised for its scientific accuracy, which led to the publication of 2 scientific papers and the American Journal of Physics calling for it to be shown in school science lessons. Interstellar was named one of the best films of the year by the American Film Institute. At the 87th Academy Awards, the film won the Best Visual Effects and received 4 other nominations: Best Original Score, Best Sound Mixing, Best Sound Editing and Best Production Design. Nolan curated the short film EMIC, a time capsule from the people of Earth. It was specifically inspired by the themes of Interstellar and attempts to capture and celebrate the human experience on Earth. In 2015, Nolan's production company Syncope formed a joint venture with Zeitgeist Films to release Blu-ray editions of Zeitgeist's prestige titles. The first project was Elena from director Andrzej Zawiergwiew. As part of a Blu-ray release of the Key brothers' animated work, Nolan directed the documentary short Key. He also initiated a theatrical tour, showcasing the Keys in absentia, the Comb and Street of Crocodiles. The program and Nolan's short received critical acclaim, with IndieWire writing in the review that the brothers will undoubtedly have hundreds, if not thousands more fans because of Nolan, and for that the Key brothers in 35mm will always be one of latter's most important contributions to cinema. In 2015, Nolan also joined the Film Foundation's Board of Directors, a non-profit organization dedicated to film preservation. On the 7th of May, it was announced that Nolan and Martin Scorsese had been appointed by the Library of Congress to serve on the National Film Preservation Board as DGA representatives. Nolan and Thomas served as executive producers on Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, the sequel to Man of Steel and the second installment of the DC Extended Universe. Nolan was involved with the production in an advisory capacity. The film was a box office success but received mostly negative reviews from critics. In December 2015, it was announced that Nolan would direct and produce a film based on World War II, titled Dunkirk, based on his own original screenplay. The film is scheduled to be released on the 21st of July 2017. Finn Whitehead, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Mark Rylance, Kenneth Branagh, Harry Styles, Jack Lowden and Anaran Barnard have been confirmed as part of the cast.